Okay, I think welcome to episode 2. If you can hear me, somebody please comment something, but I think it's working. Um, so if episode 1 was me basically saying, give me all your money, that's the only reason I'm here. Episode 2, I would like to explain, it's not like I've just listed out like all these reasons. I mean, I see no reason basically not to be on the internet in 2023. Obviously I get that I can't just like go spew everything valuable because it'll ruin everything for both sides. But to me, yes, I just didn't really want to beat around the bush. I see like ample business opportunities for being here, and would definitely prefer to have more money than I currently have. But B, I know 5-ish years ago, for a lot of you, I might have helped explain some things in Bitcoin that could have led you down the rabbit hole with me or on your own, but because of me. And, of course, the 10x price action from the time of those streams is cool for everybody. But I think the whole journey down the rabbit hole is, one of the most important ways I can spend my life. And I know when sometimes I write some of the long tweet threads and everything, and even here speaking, it's probably very easy to come across as a like borderline psychotic religious cultist. And so if there's any hope of explaining some of the things I do without sounding like I just chugged a gallon of ayahuasca, I think it's probably better to speak in person or do video here. So that's another reason I'm doing these podcasts. And I genuinely believe like one of, if not the most important ways I can spend time here while I am here is orange pilling people. So I know for me, when I first started going down the rabbit hole and everything, I was very lucky. There's 3 or 4 people really important. One is Trace Mayer, who's not really super on the internet at all. Max and Stacy Kaiser, who probably most people know, and then Andreas Antonopoulos, most importantly. And I think to me, I probably got pretty lucky because with a training in computer science, he was able to explain a lot of things that just kind of instantly clicked for me. And maybe there's some gap where I can sort of explain some things I think I understand decently in Bro, or in like degen language. Maybe not, we'll see, but I'm going to try. And then one other thing with the scheduling, please don't get like addicted or set on once a week. It's really, really hard to win, at least for me, and extremely time consuming to win, at least for me. And that is still like my utmost goal with everything. So, I'm not like a professional content creator and will post things when, I'm able to, but if you're going to respect me enough to listen to this, I want to respect you enough to like put some time in to explain everything. So just especially during football, don't expect like a crazy content schedule for me. But anyways, I thought I would explain this with explaining my pretty crazy title, which I've found lately to be like a pretty useful framework for orange pilling friends and family. And maybe 1% of you it'll make sense for, which is still worth my time in explaining. And afterwards can try and dumb it down even more if there's still questions. But the title of the video is Language is a Subset of Metaphors, because I think if you probably polled everybody walking the planet, somewhere between 90 and 99% of people would say that metaphors are a subset of language. But it seems pretty obvious to me that it's actually the opposite. So I should also say I'm not a trained historian, anthropologist, economist, biologist, physicist. My training is in computer science, but I kind of just go ham on things I'm excited and interested in. And so I'm just going to share things I'm interested in. So anyways, in my studies, it seems pretty obvious. And I know I've written about this before. I'll make this quick, but essentially crunching down 100,000 plus years of human history into a minute or so. It seems pretty obvious that an extremely important thing that anatomically modern humans did about 100 years ago was learn how to harness fire, whether that was an accident or whatever you believe, this is really important. Yes, it helped fend off predators and be a little more productive at night. But the really important thing for our species, at least in our development, is it allowed us to start cooking food. Once we started cooking food, essentially pre-digesting it, that freed a lot of the energy and calories in food to start, instead of being wasted on our digestive system, going to our brains and growing them, and specifically growing a part of our brains called the neocortex. So, and this grew so quickly that we have these like abnormally like almost football shaped heads and skulls compared to other animals. Like you can tell that the pace of that outgrew like our pelvises, like to the point where like childbirth is above average dangerous for humans than other animals. And so the reason I bring all of this up is not to flex history knowledge or anything, but these large neocortexes that our species has seems to be extremely important. So basically, it's responsible for abstractions. And so our species has leveraged that to basically become OP and just dominate the animal kingdom. So the past is an abstraction, like it does not actually exist. And so being able to leverage the ability to think about the past allows us to learn lessons and improve and not repeat the same mistakes. The future is an abstraction. It does not actually exist. It is all just a figment of all of our collective imaginations. And so awareness of and the ability to view the future as an abstraction allows us to plan for the future, think ahead a lot more than other species do. But two other really important abstractions that we've like really superpower levered are language and money. And maybe you could even define money as just the language of value. But language, there is no like social owner of like the English language. Like, yeah, I guess Merriam-Webster has all the vocabulary words and you can look up definitions and everything. But more or less, we've just invented these sounds. They don't like intrinsically physically mean anything. And we can produce these sounds with our vocal cords and mouths. And in my case, speak into this microphone and share it with however many people across the world end up watching this. Through a ton of layers of abstractions. But even if we were just like face to face, not using this digital layer in between us, we would all just be using an agreed upon protocol of abstractions to communicate different things. And so leveraging language seems to have really separated us from Neanderthals along with money. It seems obvious, like 40-ish, 50-ish thousand years ago, the use of like seashells and other different currencies like that as money really allowed our species to sort of form these pockets of dense populations and outcompete Neanderthals at the time. And so the reason I'm explaining all of this, and up to today, where like I was explaining, we've just agreed upon. Everyone always says computers are zeros and ones. That's not actually the case. Like zeros and ones are also just abstractions. Like there are probability densities within electrons on a MOSFET transistor and all of these devices all of you are listening to me on right now. And if you're watching on YouTube, like you have this screen with a bunch of pixels of LEDs that light up different colors based on an insane stack of abstractions in between me speaking into this microphone. The reason I say all of this is that for our species history, we've basically used two different types of money. Map money, maybe ledger money, abstract money, and token money, or things that exist like in physical reality in like a three-dimensional realm. So like if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm holding this baseball. I could hand this to somebody and they could say it's theirs, but we've mostly used those two forms of money because they have different trade-offs. So like obviously in 2023, it is absurd to think that we would physically final settle in actual molecules whatever value we want to transmit with people all across the globe. And so we need, a stack of these ledgers recording Alice's balance, Bob's balance, etc., Charlie. And we can quickly, because of computers and the internet, just update a ledger, usually by trusting a human, as to whose balance is what. And so for, depending on how you want to do it, 50 to 5,000 years, we've basically had this repeated loop of trusting an arbiter of that ledger money to not fuck it up. And we are batting not, 1 for a billion, but we are batting 0 for several billion now, in trusting humans to do that. And so I think, and maybe this wasn't simple at all, but at least for me, I've found lately explaining to people, one of the best ways to explain Bitcoin is that it's basically the first example where we can leverage as a species the power of abstractions with all of the benefits of token money or physical reality. And so it's not that we are just jumping from the physical realm of molecules and whatnot into a digital realm of information, but that we're actually bridging them through proof of work mining. And that because of that, and this is where I really sound like I just chugged a gallon of ayahuasca, but it's just true. I don't know what to say. Our species basically has, for the first time, invented our own universe where the map is the territory. Like, the territory is inherent to the map itself. And that has only happened once and can only happen once you fully understand it. And so understanding that technology is pretty crazy to think about. And that, let's say the last 5,000 years of, if money is the primary incentive structure for driving human action, and for the last 5,000 years has been based on theft, which I don't like. Currency expansion and inflation just is one group of people closest to the money spigot transferring wealth from another group of people not close to the money spigot to themselves without the other people's permission or consent. I don't know a cleaner example of the word theft. Maybe I'm just not an expert in vocabulary, but to me, that's theft. And so that if we were running a world where the primary incentive structure for all of our action was a money based on theft, the complex emergent properties of that species would be a lot of all the bad things we see today: deceit, corruption, distrust. And that if we created a base layer of money based on truth and hope and abundance, probably the complex emergent properties of our species would be preferable, in my opinion. That seems like a logical deduction. So I wanted to explain that. If there's specific questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, this might be a very quick episode. I see there's not a ton of people in here. Thank you for taking the time. You're welcome. I should be in the Calcutta. I have never done a Calcutta. I'm not really focused on golf at all. It's next to impossible for me to do 2 sports. I can barely do it, but 3 sports is not really an interest of mine. So looks like this might be a short episode. That's totally fine. I'll wait a few minutes to see if there's other questions, but I wanted to explain that quick framework. If people have more specific questions, I'm happy to go over them. If not, we'll keep this one short and everybody can enjoy the rest of their Monday. I got asked who will win the World Series. That's not really, I'm not sure I'm the best person in the world to ask for that. I mean, futures are not even like remotely my priority. There's probably some interesting study I could do, and like I can't even imagine like what an edge would really be in that. So I mean, for betting purposes, I would just ignore. I mean, I guess Atlanta probably has to be considered the decent favorite so far, especially with Freed and Wright coming back. That's pretty crazy. Are you bullish or bearish for the rest of 2024? I don't think it serves most people to think on timeframes like that. So like, look, I don't want to come across as like this complete Bitcoin Puritan. Like, I absolutely, when it gets into easy mode, plan on completely hammering the green button, trading every shit coin under the sun, and totally want to profit from any market inefficiency possible. But as for like long-term stack, like just thinking about Bitcoin, 2024 versus 2023, like I think it just would serve everybody best to think about it in decades and then react on like a way shorter time frame for hammering the green button when we're back in easy mode, which I don't think is now. Like it's very difficult to predict and answer that, but thank you for the question. Thoughts on certain cold wallets. So probably we should shift to start calling what people call wallets signing devices, like physical signing devices. So the only one at all I could ever recommend is called the Cold Card from CoinKite. Maybe it's something on the order of $100 or $150, but if you can afford that at all, it's I completely recommend it. If you want to go like very hardcore, you can get so you can get a 9-volt battery, and they have one of these adapters and a power only USB cord with no data, so that you don't have to have any trust of any outlets or worry about any tampering with that, and have just a pure straight up power supply with one of these. And it looks like this, like a little calculator. And then you can buy a little micro SD card to do what's called an air gapped transaction. And so hopefully none of this like scares anyone or becomes too complicated. You really do not need to be technically proficient, in my opinion. Like most everybody can learn how to do this. And that way your device never has to interface with anything that ever touches the internet just to be like overly secure. How will college football partners be notified if they've been selected to join your partnership? Not 100% sure, but 99.9% sure you can expect an email reach out tomorrow with all of that. And then we'll start talking and see what makes sense for both sides to work out. How much of your wealth is in crypto? Well, if crypto is non-Bitcoin crypto tokens, which is how I take that word, zero. So I know this isn't really the question, but just the question to me sort of demonstrates not understanding that I'm pretty hardcore Bitcoin maxi. Again, this is not on my high horse. I think trading is amoral. I'm totally interested in trading shit coins in both directions and making money off them. But as for holding or, any of the like bullshit rationale for them existing, I deplore them. I think they set back everything I explained at the jump a ton. I think the simplest way to explain it, if your background is not computer science, is so if you were into computer science at some point in your life, you would take some class on data structures. So essentially, they're just tools to help you accomplish a certain problem. So like, it would be really idiotic, really, really idiotic for me to use this stuffed kitten as a hammer to like build a house with. Just as it would be equally psychotic and idiotic for me to like sleep with a hammer next to my head in my bed as like a plush toy or something. And so, there's different objects and tools in the world for different use cases. And so in this data structures class, you might learn about things called trees, binary trees, stacks, queues, linked lists, arrays, hash maps, whatever. One data structure is called a blockchain. And really more specifically, the underlying data structure is called a Merkle tree. And so I'm not going to go into like hardcore nerd stuff of explaining it, but it's important to know that this data structure has existed since the 1970s. None of this is remotely new or innovative technology. And there's a reason that from the 1970s until 2009, no one used one for hardly any practical purposes or cared about them at all. And that is that they are extremely, extremely inefficient for 99.9999999% of things. And so this whole shitcoin craze of decentralizing different things or making different things trustless is pretty stupid. So it essentially, blockchains should only ever be used if your complete and utmost goal is total and utter maximalization of decentralization and trustlessness. And to use one for anything, even if it's like a small, minuscule trade-off in that, is really idiotic, and you should just use a database. So pick literally any crypto other than Bitcoin, and basically every single one would be infinitely better off implemented as me saying, I'm going to start this Google spreadsheet. It's going to be 2 rows. Row 1 is going to be people's names, and row 2 is going to be their balances. And you guys are just going to trust me. I'll keep care of the list. And whenever you want to send different money, I'll update your balances. So Alice, you have $10 and you want to send 5 to Bob, who already had 20. Well, now Bob has 25 and you have 5, and I'll update it. Just trust me. And it would be significantly quicker, more scalable, would basically be able to handle Visa and MasterCard throughputs. And just better in every way, basically, than using a blockchain for anything other than Bitcoin. And so this is my extremely long-winded way of explaining I own no crypto and never will. I think maybe a cleaner example would be, like I've used this before. If you imagine, I'm not an expert on automotive history, but I'm pretty sure in maybe like the mid to late 1800s would be Carl Benz kind of pioneering stuff with cars. It would be like if somebody saw Carl Benz building a car back then with a combustion engine and looking at it and seeing, wow, like that metal shell of that car, that whole chassis, man, that's beautiful. You can paint it, so customizable. I love this thing. It's got a windshield. Wow, you can even like drive it in the rain. That's awesome. That's way better than the horse and buggies we've been using. And there's leather seats. Holy fucking shit, this is amazing. I love these cars. But I don't know about that combustion engine. It's really loud. It looks like it's going to pollute. It uses a lot of energy. I'm not sure we should use that combustion engine. Why don't we just take these metal chassis of the car and still use the horse? We need the horses. That, like, those things are beautiful. Like, we can't disrupt the horse technology. Let's keep the horses, and instead of these shitty tent, whatever, tarps, whatever the buggies were made out of, just strap these metal chassis that we can paint and colorize and sit in leather seats and start using those. Because, you know, I don't know about this combustion engine. Or, you know, take it to the next step in transportation innovation. Like around the Wright brothers, I think in the early 1900s, like they're making these airplanes, and be like if somebody saw one of these airplanes and said, wow, they're so big, they look so cool and powerful and like modern and unique. That's awesome. But I don't know about these propellers. They look really dangerous, and getting up in the air, I don't know. I just think we're going to die. Like it's so risky. We can't take such a leap. Why don't we keep these amazing, huge shapes of these airplanes with the wings? I love the wings. They look so cool. And just start driving those on the roads so we can look cooler. And we can just drive an airplane from Los Angeles to New York. It's a great idea. Like completely missing the point that the aviation is the entire innovation and the point of this. And so that is not 99%, but 100% of every crypto that isn't Bitcoin. Back to more directly answer your question, 100%. So I did another podcast called Circles Off. If you look on YouTube, Circles Off Barry Horse, it probably is the first thing. And did a really bad job, in my opinion, of answering a pretty direct question, which is, I say I'm a very risk-averse person and only hold Bitcoin. How is that risk-averse or smart at all? My simplest explanation is every single piece of property on the planet, other than Bitcoin, carries somewhere between significant and extremely significant counterparty risk. And so there's only one asset that our species has access to that carries zero counterparty risk. So I only hold it because I do not want counterparty risk. And that's it. So like maybe the best way to explain that is like back to the intro part about abstractions and everything. Because we've basically condensed physical reality, like by looking, the key takeaway of the map is the territory with Bitcoin is that we can simply look at a number or a map and know for sure, for thermodynamic physical certainty, that electrons crossed some transistor somewhere in the world and that some amount of time and energy was put into that. For sure, zero argument, ironclad. And so what that means is we have basically condensed physical property into the informational realm. And so all physical property on the planet basically is secured by contract or conflict. And really, contract is just a delayed block time of conflict. And this gets into the kind of contentious thesis of Jason Lowry, who explains his ideas way better than I ever could. But basically, we have seemingly like a 50 to 250 year block time interval between these wars where we fight about who gets to set the rules. And so really, who owns what is just determined by a set of rules that we fight about by killing each other every 50 to 250 years. So for example, like if I hold this baseball and tell you it's mine, like this is my property, the property is not actually the atoms itself. It's not the leather and the threads and whatever the fuck else is inside these baseballs. Some like rubber pill. Those materials, the actual molecules, the atoms, the physical reality in this three-dimensional space is not the actual property. Those are just atoms. The property is my relationship to them. And my relationship to them is, I mean, for something this dumb and cheap, is basically just a social contract that if I was walking through the park holding this and somebody stole it from me, like that wouldn't be very socially accepted, but like probably nobody would kill each other over it. All the way up to if you have like a stash of billions of dollars of gold, you might be worth killing over to take, because your property is only your relationship to it. Bitcoin completely changes that for the first and last time ever, in that this is again where I sound like the deranged, crazy, like psychotic religious cultist. But depending on how you custody your Bitcoin, it is not a stretch to say you are your Bitcoin. And because they do not exist in any physical realm that would incite or incentivize violence to confiscate, they are me as much as they are mine. And so that's why I only own Bitcoin. Sorry, I missed a lot of questions. Can you talk about laying 280 the other night? Just wondering how big of an edge you look for to play a favorite that large. I don't personally like differentiate like the price versus, like, I don't need a 3% edge on a minus 280 game, and I only need a 2% edge on a minus 180 game or anything like that. It's just an edge. Could I probably be high on Atlanta? Yeah, but I really don't think I'm high on the White Sox. Like, that's my White Sox number without manually adjusting Tim Anderson, who's very obviously playing through a significant shoulder injury, and clearly not playing at any remotely level near any of the projection systems. And so obviously tough loss, it sucks, but I would probably double down on my number. I don't think we were stealing at all. But I feel decent about my number on that game. Another question about crypto versus Bitcoin. Maybe I explained it. If I didn't, please keep asking questions. My overall opinion on QNT, I have no idea. It sounds like it's a shitcoin, and I don't think I'm very interested. Is Binance another FTX? I mean, it's another counterparty risk to your Bitcoin, and the only way to properly custody and for sure own your Bitcoin is to custody it yourself. And so I don't plan to trust any meaningful amount on Binance. Like, so yeah, I foresee most likely some possible market inefficiencies to trade shitcoins in the future, and I will use something like Binance, if not Binance itself, because I have weighed the risks. But that the counterparty risk of Binance is factored into all of my evaluations of whether a trade is worth taking or not. I have Ledger Nano X. Apparently that is not a good idea anymore. I would strongly recommend, I used to say something along the lines of, if you're not technically proficient at all, that something like that is fine, or even like a wallet like Blue Wallet or Electrum on your desktop, something free on your phone, are fine. if you have any meaningful amount of Bitcoin at all, I 100% recommend something like a cold card to custody it. And I think, yeah, I'm not paid $1 from them to say this. I think they have some bundle where you can get the power only USB cord and the adapter for a 9-volt battery and a micro SD card, and crucially a seed plate. So they have, in my opinion, the best tested physical seed protection technology. But I mean, that those are just buzzwords. It's a piece of metal that you stamp your seed phrase into. And so that they've been the most rigorously tested against mallets and fire and a bunch of natural disasters, and seem like the best. If you Google seed plate XOR, XOR, it stands for exclusive OR. Probably from their site on CoinKite. If not, you can DM me and I can try and find a trusted one too. There will be probably some very good tutorials on how to do what's called an exclusive OR of your seed phrase with 3 different seed plates, which I would also recommend looking into. And I know everything I just said might sound like really scary, like a technical jump. I really think this is important to do. So here, there's a small number of non-counterparty risks that I see with Bitcoin. One of them is, and I don't see a lot of people talking about this, is for sure, before the year 2080, there will need to be a hard fork of Bitcoin, for sure. The way Unix timestamps work, there will be an overflow error if we don't fix something before then. And so some would say, like, if we're going to need that, why don't we just get out of the way now? Well, there's probably in the next 45 to 50 years going to be some other unforeseeable things that might be worth like slightly tweaking a little, with a ton of like rigorous pushback against fixing or changing anything. But it seems likely that some unforeseeable thing in the world might change where we might want to work in different features. So probably if I think it's the year 2080, it might be a little before or after, but say it is 2080, maybe we'll want to do that hard fork in 2070 or 2075 or something. But the reason I say that is it's really important that you learn how to actually custody your Bitcoin at some point before then. And that even if sadly you or I won't be alive for that whoever you want to have access to your Bitcoin knows how to properly custody it. Because if you trust a custodian with your Bitcoin during that hard fork, you could get wrecked. So anyway, the reason I say all that is I know it might sound like a technical hurdle. I promise you, I don't know, maybe I'm not super qualified to say this because I kind of am, but I really promise you, I really think 99% of people on the planet can learn how to use a cold card, and don't need to rely on like a Ledger Nano-X. Owning Bitcoin on Coinbase, that's an oxymoron. You cannot own Bitcoin on Coinbase. If you, I'm using air quotes, own Bitcoin on Coinbase, you don't actually own any Bitcoin. You own a username and password to log into an account that says you have financial exposure to an asset called Bitcoin. But you're completely trusting and relying on, if you actually withdrew that Bitcoin, that you would be able to custody it. So I would withdraw it as soon as possible into cold storage and learn how to properly custody it. Sorry, just reading through some questions, trying to better understand them. So a follow-up on the Ledger question, do you find it concerning Ledger's new ability to recover your seed? Slightly. I mean, it's more about the fact that they kind of could like just strong arm and de facto force people to update their firmwares by not supporting past firmwares. And so if all support in the future goes towards future firmwares that allow silly things like this, that seems extremely not desirable. For hyper Bitcoinization to happen, would gold plummet as money moves one market to the other? Well, gold will plummet no matter what over some time frame. So probably if I were born like 20 or 30 years earlier, I probably would be like a pretty nihilist gold bug and just wouldn't really spend much time thinking about it. And like, I would, in my ideal world, love like a Austrian economics based economy on gold based back standard. But so I'm not a gold hater at all, but it's kind of just this useful tool we stumbled into leveraging for the last 5,000 or so years. But definitely it'll go to zero in the next 100 to 5,000 years. So there's something like 10 to 12 trillion dollars of physical gold like above water in vaults that humans have access to. But there's something closer to 10 to 20x that amount just dissolved into the ocean that would only require a pretty simple, well, not simple, maybe this is more than 100 years away from happening, but a human will for sure develop some mollusk to extract all of the dissolved gold from the ocean. That'll instantly like 20x the supply. But really, like, not to think like so intergalactically, but like to an extent, you know, gold supply will trend towards something approximating, you know, a really big number. Maybe in like 100 to 5,000 years. It's hard to know exactly. And it's kind of just in this pocket of usefulness. So that will happen. Yeah, I mean, I definitely suspect that the non-utility value of gold, electronics, jewelry, whatever else, will eventually drift into Bitcoin as the hard money standard because it is harder. Good question, Dan. Will college football plays be given at a specific time or just random? I mean, I don't want to say too much, but I've put a ton of thought into. Look, obviously, the only way for this business to work is if the lines are staying still enough to be bet. And so I have some strong opinions about like what times in the day that would be most doable at. So we'll be targeting that. But yeah, it'll be at specific times. Admitting you use the stuffed kitten as a pillow. No, I don't. Yeah, my girlfriend just left it here. Moreno apparently unwilling to trade Ohtani to the Dodgers. I saw a crazy, I don't know if it's true, but it seemed and sounded really convicted by the guy who shared it. That there's a story that back before the 2018 season, Kershaw was on some like family vacation. Not to be gossipy, but it's just interesting. And I heard it, so I might as well share. That Kershaw was on some vacation, I think in Africa or South Africa, or some crazy place that was like 20 hours of flying away from LA. And the Dodgers like implored and begged him to come out for their meeting with Ohtani back before 2018. And then Ohtani stood them up and just didn't show up at all in that meeting, and Kershaw was not pleased. So there's like another element of that possible trade. But yeah, I mean, that seems pretty programmed for Ohtani next year. What happens to my Bitcoin when I die? Whatever you want. One way you could do an inheritance plan is to set a time-locked address. Basically, say you keep a Bitcoin in this address, and at block height X, essentially in human terms, out on this date at this time. If I haven't done anything, send from address A to address B, and then address B would have control of them. And so you could just set that to be, you know, whatever, New Year's Day every year. And every year that you don't die, just move it before that time locked transaction happens. Or you could not, and you could just die and take your Bitcoin in your head to your grave, and then you'd be making a equally distributed contribution to every Bitcoiner in the world by dying with your coins. You can do whatever you want, though. I don't really care. Thoughts on ordinals? Not a lot. I mean, like they'll be priced out of being useful or interesting at all at some point, hopefully soon. I would prefer they don't exist, but I also don't really care that much. And, you know, they're a pretty good example of like rules without rulers. Like there's a fee market for a reason. And if people see utility in them, like I don't see any value in changing the code base to not allow them. And, you know, possibly there could be like certain things that would be worth inscriptions. So, you know, I think the JPEGs are an idiotic use of them. But I also, like, my opinion doesn't matter. Like, the free fee market of Bitcoin will sort it all out. I assume at some point in the future, governments, US government specifically, will restrict access to Bitcoin on-ramps. Anything that we can do in the Bitcoin community to stop this attack on crypto as a whole? Yes, 100%. I'll say this. I should say this way more than I do, but I try to say it a lot. Every single person, and please, there's 60 people in here right now. I mean, if one person could do this because of this, that would be awesome. But really, if 60 people in here are remotely interested in Bitcoin and going to own any, you'd have to run your own fully validating node. So I have mine here. And as long as, the network has some certain number of nodes, let's say over 10,000, which we're well over today, I have basically max conviction that there's no attack vector on Bitcoin as long as they're sufficiently physically distributed, which they are and will remain. So yeah, basically, please run a full node. And if you don't know how to, I can link you more information there. There's a Mrs. Horse. Yes, I'm extremely lucky. She is awesome. I like Otani even more now. You don't like Kershaw? I love Kershaw. I think, man, he there's like a small number of athletes that I like would really obsess over going to watch in person. And I just am like amazed at him. Like his entire career, everything about him is just unbelievably impressive to me. But yeah, I definitely don't root for the Dodgers, but he is impossible to not root for. Please confirm that NFTs are dumb AF. NFT stands for no fucking territory. So back to the intro. I retweet I'm not going to be able to do any justice to this. If you go to my Twitter right now and maybe scroll back a week or so, or maybe only a few days, I retweeted a thread from GG is his name, GG, I think is his Twitter handle. And I retweeted it saying something like, I reread this thread every month or two for the last 2 years, and I learned something new every time. Go find that tweet and read through that thread, and that will explain to you far better than I will ever be able to about why NFTs are, in your words, dumb AF. That doesn't mean they're not extremely tradable and could present like awesome, potentially multi-year trades. But yeah, like over a long enough time horizon they are. Will you preview any other conferences like ACC? I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Moneyline Cam. Yeah, probably maybe one or two more. I'm not going to do every team. I mean, that'd just be stupid. But yeah, they're fun, and maybe we'll do a small one. Like I think Conference USA is pretty small this year, so I don't think that would hurt us a ton. But we'll see. I do numbers with a lot of people too, so maybe have somebody other than Bud on if they're willing to. But yeah, that's the plan with that. Anyways, looks like it's slowing down. Thank you for everybody who stayed on. I'm going to wrap this up and see how Luis Severino pitches tonight. And there's more. I'll finish quickly. Do you have any plans to start a business around Bitcoin? Yeah, I mean, every day that passes. How are you, by the way, Dan? I recognize your name. I hope you're doing well. Every single day that passes, I basically become, and again, I know this makes me sound like a freak religious zealot, and I never thought in a million years growing up I would be one of these people at all. But like truly, every day that passes, I like try really hard to strip down. Like I run the Bayes theorem in my head every single day. Like if my prior probability is Bitcoin should be whatever, 100 to 200 trillion dollar market cap in US dollar terms. I try as hard as possible to break down that assumption as hard as I genuinely can and form a posterior probability of lower than that. And every single day, the exact opposite happens, and I become more convicted. And not just, look, I think we're very likely to all do really well in investment terms on the Bitcoin, but like in addition to that, I become significantly more convicted by the day, basically, that there's like a moral imperative to our species to make Bitcoin work. Because like if you watch, there's a kind of viral video, I think of Friedrich Hayek talking about a sly roundabout way to solve all of the money problems in the world today, basically. I don't know that it could ever happen again. Like if Bitcoin doesn't work, it really would have to be something so far in the future, so far after anybody watching this episode would be alive, because you basically necessarily need like a arguably, I would say, like not really reaching institutional level attacks until the Bitcoin civil war in 2017. So like there arguably was like an 8-year launch period for a decently fair launch where it wasn't stomped out, and arguably could have been. Um, so you're basically going to need something like a multi-year, possibly 8-year pocket where people aren't going to be looking for the next Bitcoin, which I don't really see being likely to happen in our lifetime. So anyways, that's my very long way of saying I think we really need to make Bitcoin work. And so, yeah, I would love to start a Bitcoin business. Steve Hoff, please link the full node info. If you Twitter search my Twitter handle and the word node, there's a good chance I have a thread linking to a YouTube video from BTC Sessions. I think his name is Ben. That is like a 45 to hour long video explaining what for most people, would be the simplest way. Basically, you're gonna need to buy a couple terabyte hard drive, probably an Ethernet cable if you don't have one. That's like $5 max on Amazon, and then a Raspberry Pi computer board. So, and then if you want, again, they're not paying me $1, but I'll show mine off. You can 1 second, sorry. You can get a closing shell like this. Mine says Bitcoin is hope, and just keeps everything like nice and pretty organized, with holes to put the power supply and connect the hard drive into, and the Ethernet cable. That's basically all the hardware. So, something like $100 to $200, and then an internet connection. Which brings me to a pretty nerdy point I wasn't planning on bringing up today, but I might as well share it. And if it interests anyone, it was interesting me the other day, so I'll just share it. Which is not to like completely derail this answer and ramble on and on a longer tangent, but if you're at all familiar with Jeff Booth's thesis that we basically need to be technology adjusting inflation, and that if you really, I've brought this example up before, and so has he. But if you look at 1980 versus today, a cup of coffee is something like 80 times cheaper and more efficient from the coffee bean plant into the person's cup in Starbucks. But back then cost 50 cents and today's cost $5. That's not actually a 10x in inflation. It's more something like 800x when you technology adjust it. And so his point is basically that if we allowed all of the benefits of technology, making things cheaper, faster, better at scale, that those price drops would trickle down to society in the form of things being cheaper. Eventually, to the point like they just couldn't slow down how cheap the camera on this phone is, or the calculator app on this phone, which like even for me growing up before iPhones and stuff, like I think in our math classes we used to have to buy some like crazy TI whatever calculator for like 50 to $100, and now you probably can do anything any of those calculators could do on like Google, or for sure Wolfram Alpha for free, completely for free, because it's one line of code, or stuff like those crazy TI calculators are probably a few hundred lines of code, but it's pretty straightforward to scale that. And so there's some things that couldn't stop from getting a lot cheaper. But my point in bringing all of this up is if somehow the world were ever on a Bitcoin standard and allowed the technology gains and productivity to trickle to society in the form of cheaper prices, we might see a world, and this is crazy to me to think about, we might see a world where all of the hardware I just described as costing $100 to $200 might be something closer to nothing. And that a 4 exahash or exabyte hard drive. Sorry, I'm used to exahashes or petabyte, like some crazy sized hard drive for storing the Bitcoin blockchain could effectively be free. And if that ever happened, then we could actually revisit the Bitcoin civil war in 2017 and consider bigger block sizes to allow basically scale and throughput on the order of the Visa and MasterCard network. Because the only reason that was so contentious and it was such a bad idea is because that would instantly make it so anybody wanting to run a full node would basically have to start spending thousands of dollars on hardware, and it would become more and more expensive, which would centralize Bitcoin nodes across the world, and that would basically ruin the entire value proposition of Bitcoin as an investment, but also as like a species level technology. And so, anyways, I just found that kind of interesting. Like, it's pretty crazy that a Bitcoin standard world might create a way where we don't even need things like Lightning Network if everything I just explained happened. And would love to hear Jeff Booth's thoughts on that one day. How successful have you been betting college football? So I haven't bet college football like a normal person since 2019, meaning like 1 unit a game. I for sure get a unit on the game. Betting, not like triple jamming bad prices at post, like right before the game. And that was just under 40 units on a unit a game. So no guarantee that would repeat. Since unit notional would not be impressive, but like the unit is like a kind of silly number for me to share. I kind of think honestly, like as ego inflating as it is, like US dollars is almost more important number to know, because that encapsulates like how mature the market is when you're betting, and how much you're able to move and how bad of a price you're getting, on and on and on. But yeah, I mean, I'm very confident in my edge in college football. I would say like things have changed a lot since I was way more active on Twitter, where probably my first year on Twitter in 2018, the way I was betting was very easy but not simple, meaning like my manual work was somewhat limited. Like obviously in the off season I did a ton of engineering work, but during the season it was basically like checking for bugs or like dumb little things where like there's a new player with an accent on a vowel in their last name and I just need to take the accent off, or like an enye on the N in some of the Latin players' names. But mostly like just let the code win for me, which was not simple at all. Like the way the games are winning was like very 4D chess, I guess. And I've sort of tried to migrate to the opposite, which is simple but not easy. Like a lot of hard work to basically form relationships and get information that most people putting any thought into the game would probably agree with me on if they got the same information. Because honestly, like a lot of the 4D chess stuff of just thinking better with a computer model on any sport is, and like it's not like there's been like this crazy obvious inflection point where this happened and every day after has been different. But I can at least observe like the market largely starting to converge on like similar processes, computer and statistics and probability wise, on pricing teams and players. Not fully and completely, like there's some edges on that. But I don't think you're stealing on anything with just blind following a computer unless you're betting on Sunday for, college football Saturday, or maybe like Monday openers. So my point in saying that is that I've shifted towards a lot of like just getting good information. But yeah, anyways, I am very confident in the college football edge. Anyways, looks like questions have died down. Thank you for making it this long. I did not think it would last this long, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I do not know what episode 3 will be or when it will be. I would one day, when I'm more comfortable doing things like this, I'm not trained in journalism at all, prefer to do, I guess, interviews where other people talk who are smarter than me and can explain things better than me. And we all kind of learn together and I just happen to have a microphone. I would prefer that vibe. Like I feel like very much And even maybe this episode might have come across that way, so I'm sorry if it did. But very much like 4 or 5 years ago, the tone of like how I talked and carried myself and stuff was very much like, I'm the expert, listen to me, I know everything, do this, do this, do this, which I kind of hate. Thinking back and how I probably could have sounded. And like I said, would prefer to just like learn alongside all of you with the microphone, and maybe I'm able to get cool people on through my network, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what episode 3 is. Like I said, please don't get married to like a weekly schedule, but it's just nice to have this and talk to some people. So everybody, please have a great night, and let's go see how Luis Severino looks now. Take care.